Hi, I would like to give you a bird's eye view of an airfield and the different facilities at an airfield. So I'm taking you from right above and we're zeroing into the aerodrome. And we'll start with a starting point which most of us are already familiar with. That's the main terminal building at at any given airport. So an airport normally would have an arrival and departure terminal. It could be the same, it could be more than one terminals as well. And this is our terminal here. So this is a pretty straightforward um, airfield with only one terminal. So the terminal obviously is for passengers who want to travel. They will come in, they will do their check-ins, customs formalities, shopping. The same way, if you're coming outside, you pick up your luggage, then you got to go through the immigration control and also customs if you are an international passenger. Okay, and several other things happening within that building. There are kiosks in there and stuff like that, but that's not my interest. That's not my area of specialty. We are now going to look at what happens beyond the main terminal building, and this is where air traffic control begins. So we're giving birth now to air traffic control, and we are looking at an airfield and seeing all the different functions of air traffic control with reference to an airfield. So accompanying uh, any terminal, there is an apron. This is where the aircraft park. So this is normally a restricted area. It is a restricted area. People can only go there for the purpose which they've been allowed to do so. Even if all the workers as well, they are given special permission to go into what we call the air side. So anything beyond customs and immigration, the once you come out the door, the other side, you are now on the air side, and certain rules apply. The rules that apply to passengers are just mostly you should head to the right aircraft, you should be no smoking, there should be no drinking, but there are much more regulations than that for the people who work at airports. So now this apron here is where aircraft will normally park, and the main purpose of an apron is for passengers to embark and disembark, then also for loading and offloading of cargo, and also offloading of post as well. And this is also where some aircraft are done, some servicing of the aircraft, like refueling, they're done. Some very minor maintenance. If it's major maintenance, they have to go to what we call a maintenance hangar. But in this case here, we are looking at an apron, so there is just very minor maintenance, and this is where also they upload catering facilities as well. So there are some vehicles, there are some personnel who are operating here who are not necessarily concerned with much more than just giving services to an aircraft. But again, as long as they operate in that area, it's the responsibilities of the owners of this airport to put in certain limitations, and also to make sure that people who operate within this area here are trained so that they do not endanger themselves or the aircraft which they are serving. So any airport will have parking bays, because we are expecting to be parking some aircraft. In this case here, we've got 8 parking bays, and we can see there are different sizes, and also they've got different markings. What it means is there is a reservation model on an airport. Some parking bays are meant for bigger aircraft. In this case here, we've got one of the biggest aircraft in operation in terms of passengers. It's not been around for that long, but again, because of some economic factors, it's already on its way out. But that's not the purpose of this this video, so we'll not go too much into it. So we've got an Airbus 380 there, 4-engine aircraft. It is massive, and we are just having a look at it from a bird's eye view. It's in its parking position. So normally we could also have some air bridges coming straight to the aircraft, but in this case here there are no air bridges, so passengers would have to come either by bus, taken by a bus, and then they disembark the bus so that they can then go into the aircraft. Now, what is of interest to us is what happens after the aircraft now is ready to go. So normally they're in this position here. They will need what we call a pushback, because as you can see with this width span here, an aircraft will not be able to make a turn. So they will normally ask for a startup, a pushback, then they will push back into position, this position here. And so they will be facing north. In this case, there is our arrow showing us where north is. Every airport, as far as air traffic service is concerned, the first thing the controller has to know is where his north is, because it is a direction oriented profession. You just have to know your directions, otherwise you then completely lose the picture of what is happening within your airspace and where different aircraft are, even if they're on the ground. And here again, it's a nice sunny day, but again, sometimes don't forget that there are times when we cannot see much beyond our own aircraft if we're pilots, and this is why it's very important to know how the apron is managed and the rules that apply. So in this case here, this aircraft here would have to do a pushback. So they're normally not pushed back by their own power. There will be a tag which is just parked there. When it's ready for the push, it will just push the aircraft, and then the aircraft will go into position and then complete all other checks before it starts its movement for departure. Now, we will not go beyond this red line for now. So what happens? Why do we have this kind of a surface on an apron which is different from other surfaces? This here, we must take into consideration that aircraft are parked here for very long periods of time, and their weight differs, so they could be very heavy and in that position for a very long time. So it means this surface here has got to be stronger than any other surface which is used for aircraft movement. Then we also have to be aware that different aircraft will weigh differently. So you might find that some of these parking bays might not be suitable in terms of weight wise to take certain size of aircraft. So again, these are some of the basic rules that do apply on aprons. Now, as you can see, this parking bay here is very close to this parking bay, and obviously these two parking bays are for bigger aircraft. I will tell you the reason just now with these other 4 other parking areas. So what it means to us is air traffic control do play a role even with aircraft on the apron, but very limited. If there is another aircraft also asking for the pushback and taxi, you can see with wingspan to wingspan, they will not be able to do so safely. So air traffic control has got to decide which aircraft pushes back first and delay the other. This is why you sometimes get air traffic control delays. They can start here, but they are even much more sophisticated than this. So I would like you to go through all the series all the way up to radar control, so that you fully understand. So again, now already we've got some limitations coming already in terms of traffic. So it means that one of the two will have to wait for the other before they do the same maneuver. Okay, now these are smaller aircraft. You can also, this is a parking areas for smaller aircraft. You can see there is also a design that they don't need to push back. They can make a nice turn radius and then backtrack. And again, the same for this here. And again, it means you can also probably have quite a few of these depending with the wing size, also making that maneuver. But they do not, or we do not always operate that way. There is also certain limitations in terms of how much aircraft should know about the other aircraft, and are they able to visually see the other aircraft so that they can avoid each other. And these here probably can be used for slightly bigger aircraft as well. And again, the pushback again, you can see is in place. This one will push back to this position or slightly less, and also this one here will push back onto this position here. It is then considered, if you push back to this position, if there's a parked aircraft here, you are clear of the other parked aircraft. And that is the general rule, depending with how good the pilot parks his aircraft. If he then parks it somewhere here, then that consideration is no longer in place. So again, these are some of the constraints that sometimes air traffic services has in terms of very busy environments, and where sometimes someone doesn't follow the proper rules. But then your question will be, there are all these other vehicles that are coming in for fueling, for catering. Some are just coming there for administrative issues. They are on this air side as well. Who takes care of that? That is not air traffic control business. That's the airport owner's responsibility. So as far as air traffic control is concerned, their concern will be the aircraft that are being given maneuvers by air traffic control at that particular time, then they are responsible. So they will also look out this aircraft. If once a pushback, the reason they are asking is so that air traffic control from the tower, they must check that all the way to the pushback here is clear. If there's a vehicle there, it doesn't mean that air traffic control will ignore that. They will have to stop giving this aircraft pushback, give him the reason, get someone to sort out that particular obstruction to be removed. So that's as far as it goes. So there is also pilot responsibility to be on the lookout for other vehicles, for other aircraft which might be just making maneuvers other than wanting to depart or arriving. So it is quite some work for air traffic control, because you've got aircraft arriving, aircraft departing, and sometimes it's arriving and wanting to use the same parking bay. So it is quite a balancing act, and sometimes there is delays. Like we said, today it's a sunny day, so we hope other than technical issues, no aircraft are really delayed. But sometimes with heavy weather, which we're going to simulate as well with time, you'll find that that is where your bottleneck sometimes. So an aircraft is coming, wants to park there, you might have to change him to into another parking bay, and again that way you might also have to switch them onto the very end of the parking bay, and then in coordination with airport management, you might have to restructure the parking system again. So this is why you find things move a little bit slower when there is bad weather, because now you are relying on pilots also seeing others, and the tower also with a limited view, they're supposed to make some decisions that will keep those aircraft from each other. Now you might wonder, then the yellow lines, they always start and end from the apron, so this is the path the aircraft will take to go out for departure, and if it's arriving, it will also take this route, and they're called taxi lanes. So these are apron taxi lanes because they're at the apron. And beyond here, the red line, it automatically tells us new rules apply. Here we have said aircraft to aircraft, depending with the procedures, air traffic control, they've got some responsibility, but not with other obstacles. Beyond this here, you'll find that the new rules will change, and this is the red line, which means all the other vehicles that are permitted to work on here, not all of them will be permitted to go beyond this red line unless certain conditions do apply. Just a quick recap. The main apron, where the aircraft will park to offload or